So in a previous session, you saw with Amy how multivote works. And this is a technique that you can also apply here if after going through queue chart or hierarchical process or speed ideating, you find yourself with 2 or 3 concepts that you're not being able to decide from. So you can apply multivote in this scenario too. You can also use a more visual way to do it. It will require some facilitation, but it also allows for people to give some sort of scoring and then you being the facilitator averaging it. So it's called the 5-finger vote. Basically, you're asking some of these key questions for each of the concept and people are voting with their fingers. And you are looking at the average of the group and assigning those votes to each of the concepts. So it's a very simple technique, but sometimes when you're arriving into these sticky points, it is important to come up with something really simple that can help having the team moving forward. So this is a couple of ways in which you can do it. Now, I wanted to finish this session by talking about some crucial aspects of the concept evaluation stage. The first one I briefly touched and then emphasized and is the importance of the criteria. And I would encourage you to really think about dividing your criteria between what it is the specific criteria and what it is the default criteria or the general criteria, because those things really are going to define the feasibility of what you're doing. So in those default criteria, you may include things as resources, time, skills, etc. The other thing is how to know when to use one of these techniques. So ideally, you'll need to assess what your mode is. And this has to do with the question I asked you before about how much time you have to invest. So if you see that your teams are having trouble coming up with a consensus, then you may want to enter crisis mode. But don't panic. Some of these collective decision-making tools can make your life easier and can help teams coming up into consensus. Don't feel afraid to shift gears and moving from one technique to the other. It can happen that a team doesn't really feel comfortable working with visuals. It can be that the team doesn't really feel comfortable evaluating collectively each of the ideas. So you may find ways to use these tools and adapt them so that you meet whatever the needs of the team that you're working with is. And finally, you may find after going through all of this, your team was not able to come up with just one concept. Let's say they came up with 2 concepts. Well, sometimes you see that happen. You can make an exception and you can have your teams moving those 2 concepts to the next stage. And then maybe in that stage when they start like doing some sketch models and doing some physical experimentation with these concepts, and you'll see some of these in further sessions, then they will realize what concept has better horizon to be feasible and to be done and to actually tackle the criteria that you've come up with. So this is known in the literature as concurrent engineering, and it's something that big companies have the luxury to do. So what you're seeing here is an example of concurrent engineering for one Google product, the Google Glass. And companies can move concepts pretty much all the way up to when it's almost ready to be manufactured. And they can do that because they have the resources to do it. In the context of development, we surely don't have those affordances. So you are going to have to be very mindful about how much you move your concepts forward. And as a facilitator, you really have to think through how you can guide your team in making those decisions. A couple of resources that I want to point you to. Idea Sandbox is this really neat compilation of articles and tools and basically a repository of knowledge of people who have gone through not only the process of concept selection, but other stages of the design process. So it's really great to be able to see how others have solved issues when going through these processes. And then the other one is Lumio. Lumio is a software that is a suite of tools for collective decision-making. So it has polls, it has things similar to Multivote. They're all automated. People can easily deploy this and have people voting on their devices. Clearly, this may not be the solution if you are working on a poverty context, but if you have the chance to do this for one reason or the other, you can use some of these tools to make things even more objective and have the software doing all the work for you. So that will be everything for this session. Thank you so much, and I hope you've enjoyed the session, and I'll see you next time.